Hey everyone, it's Drew from Diving Sports. I am back, and today I'm going to show you how to put together a Sidemount regulator set. This is actually the second video I've made about Sidemount scuba gear. In the first one, I went over how to put together and attach all the tank rigging. If you haven't seen that video yet, I would recommend checking that out. Also, if you like the video and enjoy our content, remember to subscribe and comment down below if there are any videos you would like to see in the future. We're always looking for new ideas. There are a few ways to put together your regulators for side mount diving. I'm going to show you two different ways. There are more, but these ones I found to work well for me. Just as before, this is not meant as a way to teach anyone to side mount dive. If you are not certified, you should definitely get trained from a certified instructor before going to dive and use this equipment on your own. So we're going to start with the setup that is the most common, the short hose, long hose setup. I'm going to give you a list of everything you are going to need, and then we will go over how to assemble it and how it should look on your cylinders. So starting off, we are going to need two first stages, ideally with a swivel turret and a fifth bottom low pressure port. Two second stages, whatever is comfortable for you to use, and also it is useful if they have an adjustment knob on the side so you can tune one down while you aren't using it. One low pressure hose, around 28 inches to 32 inches depending on your size. One angle adapter. One small swivel bolt snap, one long 7-foot low pressure hose, around 1/8 inch bungee cord or something similar, two 6-inch high pressure hoses, two SPGs, and two 6 to 13 inch low pressure inflator hoses for your BCD and dry suit if you are diving in cold water and you're using one. The tools you will need are a wrench, often 14 millimeters, zip ties, an O-ring, a cutting tool, and an Allen key, usually around 4 millimeters. To put it all together, we are going to start with the left side regulator or the short hose. So if we're starting with our short hose regulator, we're going to start with the first stage. We've got high pressure hose that goes on one side, and the left hand side or the short hose is going to be over here. So we want to make sure that the low pressure side is pointing inwards towards our body and the high pressure port is going backwards. And then we're going to tighten that down just so it's overhand tight. Get our high pressure spool on here. And then remember to use two wrenches when you get that tightened down so you don't accidentally break anything. And then we'll move on to the low pressure side. So we'll start with the regulator. So the short hose here, around 28 inches to 32 inches. And this one already has a little bit of an angle adapter or swivel to make it easier when it's going in your mouth so it doesn't feel like it's pulling out so much. So we're going to attach it to the swivel down here so it can point directly behind us, or you can rotate it out. And again, snug that down, just overhand tight. And to attach the second stage, just screw that on. And use a wrench to get it snug. Don't over tighten them because you don't want to break anything. And then the last hose to go on is going to be our inflator hose. And again, that's going to go on the bottom fifth port, and it's going to be pointing directly to our body so that it can plug into the BCD or the dry suit from the other side. And with that one, you are going to make sure that it's nice and tight, but not too tight. If it's really loose and just barely hand tight, I've seen a lot of these come off when people are getting ready and putting things together in the water. Now the last piece to go on our left-hand side or our short hose is going to be the bungee necklace. So any thin little bungee cord will do, right? So it's nice and stretchy so it can go over your head, and you just want to tie little knots at the end. And then what we're going to do is zip tie it to the mouthpiece here. You can either do it under the one mouthpiece or you can add a separate one over top. I'll just do that so you can see what it looks like. So we'll make sure that it's on either side. You don't want it too much in the middle or in the top because then it'll dig into your lip. And then we'll just tighten it down so you can see what that looks like. And then with a pair of cutters, chop off the excess zip tie and make sure it's nice and flat so it's not sharp and digging into your lip. And there we go. Now let's move on to the right side or the long hose. We'll look at the first stage. Again, this is going to be on your right side. So you want your high pressure hose pointing down and your low pressure inlet facing into you. So we're going to put the high pressure hose into the port. Get it tight. And then attach the gauge to the bottom down here. And then same thing as before, we're going to make sure we use 2 wrenches to get it snug. And then we'll move on to the low pressure side. Now the regulator hose is going to attach to the side of the swivel so it can point backwards or forwards. And we're going to attach the 7-foot long hose to that right here. Spin it. And then get that snug. And on this one, you don't need an angle adapter because the hose is so long, so we can just attach the second stage straight to the hose. And then again, get that tight so it's not going anywhere. Now, on the long hose, what's going to change is instead of having a necklace to attach it to ourselves, we're going to be using a breakaway bolt snap system. So what you're going to be using is a zip tie, a swivel bolt snap, and a little O-ring. And you're going to attach that generally about 1 fist length away from the second stage. It will depend on personal preference, so you can move it kind of anywhere along here. So to make our breakaway, what we're going to do is pinch the O-ring and then put that over top of our double-ender bolt snap. So we make 2 loops at the bottom, and they're going to thread the zip tie through that so it catches and holds on. So you'll see it's a little bit stretchy, and that's okay. And then what we're going to do is put that over our second stage hose, tie it down nice and snug so it doesn't slide up and down the hose, and then you've got your little attachment point. The good part about that is if you pull on it hard enough, it will snap off, so that when this is clipped to you, you can still donate easily without having to fumble around with the bolt snap. And then to finish it off, cut the excess of the zip tie, and you've got your second stage. And now lastly, we're going to put our low pressure inflator hose onto the first stage, and again that's going to be pointing straight into our body from the right hand side. So that goes on the bottom facing 5th port, and use a wrench to get it snug so it doesn't go anywhere. And then it's done. Now that we have our regulator put together, let's look at it on a tank. The short hose goes on your left hand side with the valve facing you and the handle on the outside. We want the high pressure hose pointing backwards for protection and the low pressure inflator hose pointing inwards so we can connect it to the BCD. While it's not in use, the hose should be stored in your hose retainer neatly. If you don't remember how to make those, check out our last video. The long hose goes on the right hand side, again with the gauge pointing backwards and the low pressure inflator hose pointing inwards. Since this is the long hose that you would be donating to an out-of-air diver, you aren't going to need the entire length of the hose for the majority of the time, so you want to make sure that it's tucked away nicely and neat and there aren't any entanglement hazards, just like this. While you aren't using the long hose, the whole thing gets put away, but while you are diving, remember you only have to remove half the hose, so it comes out like that. Now, at the beginning, I said I would show you 2 different ways of setting up your regulators. The next way I will show you is the double short hose method. So you are going to need 2 first and second stages, just like before, 2 medium length low pressure hoses, both 40 inches or 1 meter in length, 2 double ender bolt snaps, 2 angle adapters, 1.5 millimeter bungee cord or something similar or cave line, 2 6-inch high pressure hoses, 2 SPGs, and again 2 6 to 13-inch low pressure inflator hoses for your BCD or your dry suit. So for now, I won't go too much into the difference on how to dive them. That can be its own video, but let's look at how to put it together. So we're going to start again with the left hand side. Now there's no short or long hose with this one. They're going to be the same length, so it just depends on which way you put the hoses. So again, we've got the first stage, high pressure port facing backwards so that it's protecting the gauge. I've already attached the swivel gauge because we did that on the first one. So we're going to spin that on here, tighten it down with the wrench. And then we're going to attach the short hose to our swivel and use a wrench to get that down. And then before we move on, we're going to attach the angle adapter so that it fits in your mouth easier so it doesn't feel like the hose is pulling it out. And then tighten it with a wrench. Now this is where it takes a little bit of playing around depending on the second stage that you have. I've got my pre-cut little bungee loops here, and this is going to be used to attach my double ender to the bottom of my second stage. So So because I already know how tight they need to be, I'm gonna make it so that these guys attach something like this. That way I've got these that open up, and this is what I'm gonna use to attach my second stage to my harness D-ring so it doesn't fly out everywhere. And then the last two things we're gonna do is attach our second stage to the angle adapter here and tighten that down with a wrench. And then we're going to attach the inflator hose to the bottom port so that we can connect it to the BCD. And that's the left-hand side regulator done. Now for the right-hand side regulator, because everything's pretty much the same, I've got most of it preset up. The only difference is the first stage is going to be pointing the opposite direction. So you just need to change the high pressure port to the other side compared to the left-hand side. So we're going to start by attaching that. So if my regulator is on my right-hand side, it's over here and the gauge points back. I'm going to have my low pressure hose for my regulator attached to the swivel. And then lastly, we're going to attach the low pressure hose to the bottom. And you'll notice I have a really long inflator hose for my dry suit. And that's because if something were to happen, I can plug this hose in from this direction to either my dry suit or my BCD. While you aren't diving or while you're cleaning up during a safety stop, these hoses can be tucked away easily and stored with pretty minimal effort. But while you are diving, these will both be pulled out and they're going to be routed along your body in different ways. I will do a longer video later showing how to properly use each configuration if anyone is interested. I think that about wraps it up. The good thing is when you're setting up your regulators, there isn't too much that needs to be adjusted compared to your harness or your tanks. Remember, nothing can substitute for proper training with a certified instructor, so if you are new to Sidemount, I highly recommend that you get in contact with your local dive shop to get the training you need before trying it out for the first time. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll see you next time.